morning came clear and almost indifferent. The sky had rinsed itself of storm. No wind, no urgency, just pale blue stretching above the blackened skeleton of what had been a house. Ash lay in low gray drifts where the structure had stood. The scent of char and wet wood still hung in the air, sweet and bitter at once. A faint curl of smoke rose from a stubborn beam that had not yet given itself over entirely. The boys were gone with Lois. Margaret had knelt in front of them before the truck door closed. She had smoothed Jack's collar with fingers that would not shake. She had pressed a kiss into Oscar's hair and breathed in the smell of soap and sleep and child. "Go on," she had said. Her voice had not broken. Now the debris had been stacked. Noah moved through it carefully, not hurried. Salvageable boards to one side, splintered framing to the center. Nails bent flat beneath the heel of his boot when they could be. The scrape of metal against wood sounded steady, methodical. This was not destruction. This was order. Margaret stood a few feet back, close enough to see the grain of the charred boards, far enough to feel the heat without being forced away. Smoke rose before flame. The kindling caught slow, reluctant at first. A thin orange thread moved along the dry wood, then deepened. Resin hissed. Sap bubbled and burst. The air shifted warmer against her face. The fire did not leap. It settled. A porch board curled inward on itself. The window frame that had once held lace curtains blackened, then collapsed in on its own weight. Heat began to hum low and constant, like a breath drawn and held. Neither of them spoke. The beam that had once run through the center of the house shifted. It had been the spine. It had held the roof above her boys when they slept. It burned darker than the rest. It held a moment longer, stubborn and bowed, then gave way with a sound deep enough to travel through the ground. Something inside her broke with it. The sob came without warning, sharp and torn, pulled from deep enough to surprise her. It caught in her throat before she could swallow it back. Her hands folded inward first, fingertips pressing into her palms. Then her shoulders curved. Then her body bent forward as though something invisible had struck her just beneath the ribs. Noah crossed the distance in a single step. He gathered her fully, arms firm around her back, one hand wide against her shoulder blades. She gripped his jacket hard enough to crease the fabric, the rough canvas biting into her fingers, as if she needed something solid to anchor against. Her face pressed against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady, then faster. The smell of smoke clung to him. Wood, sweat, fire. Behind them, the house snapped and popped as flame found deeper air. He closed his eyes. His jaw tightened. His own vision blurred with heat and something else. He lowered his head and pressed a kiss into her hair. Not dramatic, not lingering, just there. A quiet claim of shared grief. She sobbed into the fabric of his shirt, not small tears, not restrained, but the sound of something long held finally breaking loose. Years of endurance, years of silence, years of surviving in walls that had watched and kept their secrets. The house had been her father's. It had been her refuge. It had been proof that she could endure what had tried to break her. Now it was flame. When the sobbing slowed, when it turned from breaking to breathing, he lifted one hand to her temple, thumb brushing the edge of her cheekbone, and kissed her forehead. He did not say, "It will be all right." He did not say, "We'll build again." He did not speak at all. He simply held her while the fire completed what the storm had begun. Her breathing steadied first, then her shoulders, then her hands released their grip. She stepped back first, always her. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand, leaving a faint streak of ash across her skin. The heat from the fire brushed against her cheeks. The structure was no longer recognizable. It was only shape and ember. Ash lifted in slow spirals into the morning air. "Let it finish," she said. Her voice was rough, but steady. Noah nodded. They stood together, not touching now, watching until the beam collapsed entirely, and the fire settled lower, deeper, inward, when the house was no longer a house, when it was only ground. Act II, the table. By afternoon, the smell of smoke clung faintly to their clothes, settling into cotton and denim, as if it meant to stay. Inside the diner, the counter had been cleared, plates stacked, coffee cups rinsed and turned upside down, the hum of the refrigerator steady in the background. Outside, the town moved again. A truck passed. A door shut somewhere down the street. Life did not pause. Graph paper lay spread across the laminate. The edges curled slightly from the humidity left behind by the storm. A sharpened pencil rested at the corner. A tape measure, metal edge catching the light. Margaret's ledger opened flat beside it. The insurance sheet folded neatly, squared with the page. Noah drew the outline of the diner first. He traced its footprints slowly, marking the walls as they were thick, reliable, proven. Then he drew up an enclosed staircase along the exterior wall. Separate entrance. No access through the diner itself. Margaret leaned over the paper, one hand braced against the counter. A strand of hair had come loose from her tie. She tucked it back without thinking. "Not through the kitchen," she said. "No." He marked the stairwell heavier, reinforcing the line. At the top of the stairs, a small hall. From there, the living room. She traced a rectangle with her finger, measuring space not just with numbers, but with memory. "Full enough for a sofa," she said. He widened the line, adjusted the span. The balcony extended from the living room wall narrow. Just a rail. Enough to step outside and breathe. Nothing ornamental. Nothing wasted. From the living room, she marked the dining room. "A real table," she said. 6 chairs. He paused only long enough to calculate the beam needed across that span. Then He adjusted the line again. Kitchen beyond it. Compact but workable. Enough counter for flour and dough. Enough cabinet space for the dishes she refused to discard. On one side, he drew 2 smaller rectangles. Jack, Oscar, bathroom between them, she said. He marked it. Between the rooms, neutral ground, shared water, shared morning routine. On the opposite side of the living room, he drew the 3rd bedroom. She did not name it. She did not need to. Not smaller than that, she said quietly. He measured the wall span. It'll hold a double. The word hung there, practical, unadorned. She nodded once. Numbers came next. He listed lumber lengths, roofing squares, nails by the pound, electrical runs, window cost, insulation, exterior siding, stair framing. She calculated aloud, pencil scratching over the paper in steady strokes. Lost revenue if the diner closed during roofing. Cost of keeping it open through framing. Cost of doing it in phases. The numbers were tight. Not impossible. Tight. He studied the figures without flinching. I can mill some myself, he said. The smell of sawdust almost rose between them at the thought. She looked at him. Not relief, not dependence. Respect. A knock sounded against the diner door. 3 firm raps, knuckles against glass. Margaret straightened and crossed the floor. When she opened the door, cooler air slipped inside. Pete stood there, hat in hand. He looked at their boots. The ash at the hem of Noah's jeans. The faint smudge on Margaret's sleeve. He nodded once. You starting? We are. He stepped inside without ceremony. The door closed behind him with a soft click. He studied the paper in silence, leaning slightly forward. His finger traced the span between the living room and dining room. You'll need a beam here, he said. Noah marked it. Pete straightened. I've got spare shingles. No condolences. No mention of the fire. Just presence. Outside, the late afternoon light fell across the diner wall. Noah stepped out first. Pete held one end of the chalk line. Margaret held the other. The string stretched tight between them, humming faintly with tension. Noah pulled it back and let it snap. The sound was sharp and clean. Blue dust marked the siding where new structure would rise. Margaret looked at the line, then at the cleared ground beyond it. The earth was dark where the house had stood, still warm beneath the surface. Tomorrow, she said. Noah nodded. The future had been drawn.